Picture the world in the 1950s, a time when the United States was locked in a global showdown with the Soviet Union. This was the Cold War, a tense standoff where every country seemed to pick a side, or tried not to. In South Asia, two young nations, India and Pakistan, were finding their footing after gaining independence from Britain in 1947. The US saw them as key players in this global game, each for different reasons. India was a massive democracy, a potential beacon of freedom. Pakistan was a willing partner, ready to stand with America against communism. From the US perspective, helping these countries was about building a stronger, safer world. This is the story of how America stepped up with aid, navigated tricky rivalries, and made tough calls, from the Cold War to the tensions between India and Pakistan today in 2025, where President Donald Trump is playing a pivotal role. Let's start with India in the 1950s. Imagine a country bursting with people, but struggling to feed them. Poor harvests left millions hungry, and India's leaders were pouring money into factories and dams to build a modern nation. The problem was, they were running out of cash. The US, fresh off World War II as a global powerhouse, saw a chance to help. In 1954, America launched a program called Food for Peace, or PL 480. It was a simple idea: take surplus wheat and rice from US farms and ship it to countries in need. For India, this was a game changer. By 1965, the US had sent billions of dollars worth of food, think mountains of grain arriving at Indian ports. This wasn't just about filling bellies, it kept India from sliding into chaos. Over the years, America's economic aid to India added up to a staggering $65 billion in today's dollars, a lifeline that helped a young democracy stand tall, but food was only part of the story. The US also wanted to share its know-how. Back in 1949, President Harry Truman started the Point 4 program, a way to send American experts to countries like India. These folks taught farmers better ways to grow crops, helped build schools, and even worked on big projects like dams to bring electricity. When India's big economic plan in 1956 went off the rails, leaving them short on foreign cash, the US stepped in again. America rallied other countries to loan India money, keeping its economy from collapsing. From Washington's view, this was about more than charity. India was a democracy, and the US wanted it to shine as an example to the world, especially when the Soviets were whispering promises of quick progress. Why did the US care so much? It's all about the Cold War chessboard. The Soviet Union was trying to win over countries like India, offering their own aid and ideas. Meanwhile, China, another communist power, was growing stronger, and the US saw India as a way to balance that threat. The catch was, India didn't want to pick a side. Nehru, India's leader, called his approach non-alignment, meaning he'd take help from both the US and the Soviets but not fully join either team. This frustrated some in Washington, especially when India accepted Soviet aid for things like steel factories. Still, the US kept the aid flowing, betting that a strong, democratic India would lean toward freedom in the long run. Let's shift to Pakistan. Unlike India, Pakistan was all in with the US. Its leaders saw the Soviet Union as a threat, especially since it was right next door. Pakistan joined two big US-led alliances, SEATO in 1954 and CENTO in 1955, which were like NATO for Asia and the Middle East. They let the US set up military bases, like one in Peshawar, where American spy planes took off to keep an eye on the Soviets. Pakistan's location, close to both the Soviet Union and the oil-rich Middle East, made it a prize. The US rewarded this partnership with a lot of military aid, $676 million worth of weapons, tanks, and jets between 1954 and 1965. Think shiny new Patton tanks rolling off ships, ready to defend against any Soviet move. Why did Pakistan get so much more military help than India? It comes down to trust and strategy. Pakistan was a clear ally, signing up for America's fight against communism. India, with its non-alignment, was harder to pin down. The US worried about India's cozy deals with the Soviets, like buying MiG fighter jets. Before 1962, America sent India plenty of economic aid but held back on weapons, not wanting to arm a country that might not fully stand with the West. Pakistan, meanwhile, pitched itself as a frontline defender, and the US saw it as a way to secure a whole region, from the Middle East to Asia. Things got complicated in 1962, when India faced a crisis that changed the game. China, its northern neighbor, launched a surprise attack in the Himalayas, a border area both countries claimed. India's army wasn't ready, soldiers were short on guns, warm clothes, everything. President John F. Kennedy didn't hesitate. He ordered emergency aid, crates of rifles, ammunition, and coats flown in on American planes. US C-130s carried Indian troops to the front lines, and American intelligence helped track Chinese moves. By 1963, the US had pledged $92 million in military aid to India. There's even talk that the US Navy sent ships to the Bay of Bengal to warn China to back off, though historians aren't sure about that part. From the US perspective, this was about stopping a communist power in its tracks. China's attack showed it was a real threat, and India, democracy or not, needed to hold the line because India wasn't a formal ally. But the US saw the bigger picture: a weak India could let China dominate Asia, which would hurt American interests. Helping India was a bold play, and it paid off, earning the US some trust in New Delhi, even if India kept its non-aligned stance. Back to Pakistan for a moment. All this aid to India in 1962 made Pakistan nervous. They'd been America's loyal partner, but now the US was arming their rival. India and Pakistan had their own beef, mostly over Kashmir, a region they both claimed. The US tried to keep things balanced, giving Pakistan more military aid to keep them happy while helping India economically. But the Cold War wasn't just about the Soviets anymore. China was a wild card, and Pakistan started getting friendly with them, especially after 1962. This worried the US, but they couldn't drop Pakistan. Given its bases and alliances, the Cold War was a tangle of moves and countermoves. The Soviets were pouring aid into India too, about $1 billion by the mid-1960s, including weapons. The US had to compete without pushing India too hard, since its non-alignment meant it could swing either way. Then there was the 1962 incident, when the Soviets shot down an American spy plane that took off from Pakistan. That put Pakistan in the spotlight and made the US lean a bit more toward India to hedge its bets. On top of that, the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 and the growing Vietnam War were draining US attention, so South Asia had to share the stage. Still, the US kept its focus on stopping Soviet or Chinese dominance, using aid to keep both India and Pakistan in play. Then came 1965, a year that tested America's strategy. India and Pakistan went to war over Kashmir. It started when Pakistan sent fighters into Indian territory, hoping to spark a rebellion. Things escalated fast, with tanks and planes clashing. The problem? Both sides were using weapons the US had given them, which wasn't supposed to happen. President Lyndon Johnson, already dealing with Vietnam, had to make a call. In September 1965, he stopped military aid to both countries. The US also pushed for a UN ceasefire, which India and Pakistan agreed to by the end of the month. Food aid kept flowing to India to help with hunger, but the military cutoff was meant to cool things down. This was the right move, even if it wasn't popular. Letting the war drag on could have pulled America into a mess, and both countries were breaking the rules by using US gear against each other. The pause showed the US wanted peace, not favoritism. But it had fallout. Pakistan, which relied heavily on American weapons, felt let down and started buying arms from China. India, meanwhile, turned to the Soviets for more military help. The US lost some sway in the region, but it stuck to its principles, prioritizing stability over taking sides. Now, let's jump to 2025, where India and Pakistan are once again at odds, and the US is playing a crucial role. The trouble started on April 22, when a terrorist attack in Pahalgam, a town in India's Jammu and Kashmir, killed 26 people, mostly tourists. India blamed Pakistan-based groups like Lashkar-e-Taiba and hit back hard. On May 7, they launched Operation Sindoor, firing missiles at terror camps in Pakistan and the part of Kashmir Pakistan controls. Pakistan didn't sit still, they sent drones and missiles of their own, claiming India's strikes killed civilians. Both countries have nuclear weapons, about 170 each, so the world got nervous fast. President Donald Trump stepped into this high-stakes moment. He's got a lot on his plate, Ukraine, Gaza, you name it, but he saw the danger of two nuclear-armed neighbors fighting. On May 6, he spoke out, saying it was a shame and offering to help calm things down. His Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, got on the phone with leaders in both countries, pushing for peace and offering sympathy for the Pahalgam victims. The U.S. has leverage here. India's a big partner for America, especially to counter China's influence in Asia, with talks of a new trade deal in the works. Pakistan, meanwhile, depends on loans from the International Monetary Fund, where the U.S. has a big say. Just this May, Pakistan got a $1 billion IMF boost, and they know America's voice matters. Trump announced a ceasefire, saying both sides agreed to stop fighting at 5 p.m. that day. India said it was their own deal with Pakistan, not US-led, but a Pakistani official gave credit to Rubio's behind-the-scenes work. Things aren't settled, though. Hours after the ceasefire, explosions rocked Srinagar, and India's holding back on a water-sharing agreement with Pakistan, a big deal for both sides. More talks are set for May 12, and the US is staying involved, ready to nudge both countries toward peace. Why does the US care so much now, just like in the Cold War? It's about keeping the world safe. Back then, America helped India with food and weapons to stand up to China and keep democracy strong. Pakistan got tanks and jets to guard against the Soviets. The 1965 cutoff was about stopping a war that could have spiraled. Today, Trump's team is doing the same, using diplomacy and economic pull to keep a lid on a dangerous situation. India's a key ally against China, with booming trade and shared goals. Pakistan's still important, especially for stability in a tricky region. The US is walking a tightrope, just like it did decades ago, and it's making a difference. Looking back, America's aid in the 1950s and 60s was a bold move. Billions in food and loans kept India going, while military help in 1962 pushed back China. Pakistan's partnership helped secure a whole region against communism. The 1965 pause was tough but showed the US valued peace over picking winners. Now, in 2025, Trump's mediation is carrying that same spirit, guiding two rivals away from disaster. It's not easy, but it's what America does, stepping up when the stakes are high, using its strength to build a better world.